As we have a saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. It's often said that Japanese boys and girls, generally obedient, quiet, submissive, and low-key, both looks and personality-wise. My parents take it negatively and often complain that Japan's teenagers became boring, too normal, almost no personality or uniqueness, and quite pessimistic as well. Though I don't think that we can really blame them in a current economy. With all that said, the Japanese youth in the same society 50 years ago or so seems completely different. According to my parents, teenagers are way more wild, violent, aggressive, and quite rebellious against any establishment. So we had a lot of school violence, and even the police often got involved. Not to mention frequent student demonstration or protesting, and teenage gangsters everywhere in the city.
俺たち川崎の暴走族だけどよ。文句あるとかよ、いつでも来いよ、やってっからよ。頭荒らして待ってます。榎本正治、よろしく。
By the way, not just boys, but girls were also wild, and you could see so much rebelliousness.
なんだてめえ。やりなんかてめえ。
タバコ吸ってますけど。いや、いくつぐらいだからタバコ吸ってんの？14ぐらいの時から。本当に今いくつなの？今17。
As you can guess, teenage smoking or crime was insanely higher, as it was seen cool or trendy. Not to mention, teenage pregnancy was also way more common. I hear that from not just my parents, but anyone who was in those times. They all say that Japanese youth were way more wild.
My first impression of Japan, when I came here in the army from Chicago, I looked around. Wow, Japan's such a violent place in those days and so wild. You know, there was student demonstrations and things like that. And every night on the news, there were battles between the police and they're hitting each other in the head. You know, and you would see gangsters and chimpita everywhere. Young guys, and they're wearing sunglasses and Yankee style and walking down the street like this, and you better stay away from them or else it's big trouble, right? They were everywhere. You know, they are very proud of their manhood. They see a gaijin and they often wanted to challenge gaijin, you know. I mean, it was a crazy time back then. To tell you the truth, I liked that era very much. Especially young people had the very good spirit, very eager and very exciting and good time to be in Japan.
I'm sure that was not just Japan though. Teenagers in the States were also quite wild back then. But what was quite prominent in Japan is the huge amount of those bikers.
夜になると、暴走族がうるさくて、私たちのいた時の方がやんちゃな人でも荒れてたみたいで、私たちのはちょっと落ち着いてきたかなっていう、逆にそんな感じです。暴走族も不良みたいな感じで、そういうのをね、売ってるね、洋服屋さんがあった。
Around the 60s or 70s, we start to have a lot of delinquent comics or movies, which influenced the teenagers a lot.
ビーバップハイスクールとかでですね、不良を題材としたドラマだ映画っていうのが、ヤンキーとか不良みたいな人って、結構モテた。そういうの、学校でタバコ吸ったりとかですね、そういうのちょっとかっこいいみたいな。ただ今はそれはダサいものだ。昔はかっこいいものだったら180度違う。
Also, that was the beginning of Japan's economic miracle. As the economy was getting better, many people are kind of feeling liberated after repressing their own desire so long for the nation's recovery.
Japan was still, economy was not that good, but it was getting better every year. Until then, from post-war, the people were willing to sacrifice for the sake of the country. And right about then, people started feeling, I want my prosperity too, a better life. So they started pushing back against establishment.
It's worth mentioning though, the growing economy doesn't mean everyone became happy and rich, but rather we could say disparity was getting wider and visible, and especially young people starting to care and stand up against those issues, as the ideology was getting popular at that time, especially among university students.
特に日本の若い人は、なんでそういう風になってんのって、やっぱりそしたら一部の人たちが、やっぱり甘い汁吸ってんじゃないのっ
それはもっとなんとかしなきゃいけないんじゃないの。みんながやっぱり激しく主張をして、それこそ大学の紛争なんかはまあよくやってますけど、高校なんかでも結構あったんですよね。
Experts claim that affected our teenagers a lot. They came to wanna express what they really want more and seek attention from society through the fashion or behavior, visibly and actively. While nowadays, teenagers got a lot of places for that online and seek attention there, so they don't have to actively go outside and behave like this.
そんなに自己欲求は強いわけではないですけども、ネット上ですね。そっちの方が大きい。昔はそういうの発信する手段なかったんで、目立つのはそういう派手な格好をしたりとかで注目されたい。承認欲求をギャルとか、不良もそうだ。暴走族なんか。
Without the internet, they kinda had to gather in person like this, as it was pretty much the only way to feel connected with other boys and girls who got similar family environment or bad parents. Nowadays, we can still see something similar from Toyoko kids. They seek community or others with similar backgrounds and connection in person. But today, he claims those teenagers way more invisible overall because of the internet or social media expansion.
あんまり家庭環境がちょっと複雑な人とかっていうのは、そういう人が多かったかなっていう。今はそういうつながり求めるのも、LINE だとかですね、SNS、ネット上の仲良くなれるっていうのは。
He also points out in a current economy, those hobbies or activities simply too expensive now, and most teenagers or parents can't afford it. Not to mention that they are way more reluctant to take a risk nowadays, as the lack of prosperity is obvious to them, and at their age already worry about their future employment. As you might know, over these decades in Japan, that disparity is only getting wider and wider, so they're feeling more pressure to go to college or university.
不良やってたとしても、それなりの仕事にはつけた。現場の職人さんなんかも今に比べ多分給料高いし、やんちゃしてても、就職して職人でもやって稼げる。そういうのは結構あったんで、私なんか大学院出てあんまり就職状況良くなかった時なんです。96年だったんで。そうするとそういう人たちは就職もできなかったみたいな。で、昔はできましたよ。高卒で入ったような人とはだいぶ違ってると思うんですね。大学に行かなくちゃいけない、いい子にしてなくちゃいけないっていうのは多分あると思います。はい。なんか難しいのかなっていう感じはちょっとしますよね。
As you know, Japan getting tougher against those youths in many ways. For example, the police were starting to crack down on those bikers aggressively, just like they were doing against the Yakuza at the same time, which was kind of killing two birds with one stone, as the Yakuza and Bōsōzoku were closely connected at that time. So the tougher laws or regulation on the Yakuza we got, the more teenage gangsters or bikers inevitably start shrinking a lot. Also, schools aggressively start imposing their rules and strictly punishing anyone who didn't follow them. Some of those common practices becoming more and more norm and forced. As much as the students back then, teachers were also quite violent and scary, just like American police.
あれより前の世代がとても悪かったので、校則を厳しく叩いたりですね、殴ったりとか正座させたり、木刀みたいなのを持ってお尻叩くとか、ちょっと厳しかったような感じしますよね。
As you can guess, they also start imposing the idea a lot, which actually worked.
やっぱり60年代まであった学生運動のトラウマっていうのがすごいあると思うんですよね。そういうことを一切封じましたよね。そういうことをするのは世の中を乱すことだから悪いことですっていうような価値観を植え付けてしまって、決まりを守る方ばっかりやっぱり言われて、法則に従いなさいと。で、世の中には決まりがあって、そういうものを君たち守っていかないと社会では通用しないよみたいなことを言われて、大学受験でもそういうことは一切めんどくさいことになる後で。だから結局そこには触れないで、ネットに本に行く期間が増えたので、その分喋る機会が減ったわけですよ。
So in the end, those teenagers massively declined to the point where we only see them in a movie or comic. Actually, I rarely see anyone like it, especially in this decade, and even girls are almost non-existent. Now, needless to say, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said earlier, Japan's teenage crime rate is significantly smaller nowadays, but experts claim the decline of those youths might be reflecting something negative, and maybe we should be concerned. For example, school absenteeism and teenage suicides more and more common in Japan.
そういうのは減ってるし、いいのかっていうと、あんまり良くないんじゃないかな。いい子にいないとしてダメなのっ っていうような真面目にやんないと。
It could be a sign that more teenagers are hiding their issues inside and repressing the desire or feeling.
I cannot understand, even though Japanese youth has quieted down, why is bullying still such a big issue in Japan? I have a hard time understanding what makes a person hikikomori.
先生は大変だと思います。やりにくいと思いますよね。昔からいじめはありました、当然。だけど、会わなければいじめに遭うことなかったんで。今はグループラインのが作っちゃうと、そこに繋がりたくなくても繋がっちゃうみたいな。
子供たちの自殺を分析すると、学校問題っていうのが1位にずっと上がってきてるんです。悪口とか噂話流されたりとか、結構陰湿なんですよね。物を隠されたりですとか。今、早くから塾に通って受験勉強をしていて、習い事も何個か受けていて、過労なんですよね、子供たちの方が。なので、そこで暴発していく子とか、陰湿に他人をいじめるような子が結構出てきていて、そのいじめ以外のところでもいろいろ問題を抱えてたりもするんですよね。インターネットや AI っていう存在は孤立感を感じたりですとか、自尊心がね、削られていく感覚っていうのは違うかなとは思うんですけども。
Obviously, we don't know which one's really better for teenagers in Japan. I'm sure both got the pros and cons. But personally, as much as I'd be scared, I'd rather be a teenager in those times. So really wish I could experience it just like my parents. Because it seems way more exciting and fun, and looks more what the teenagers actually like. After all, teenagers are supposed to be rebellious more or less. So in a way, maybe this is kind of healthy and natural for their age. At least better than hiding or repressing your desire or frustration too much and committing suicide. Anyway, what do you think? What's your personal thoughts on those days of Japan? Let me know in the comment below. And thank you so much for watching all the way to the end.